Thanks, Steve. In Siskiyou County, I can tell you that it's similar to what's happening in other counties. You know, this realignment program was a real challenge for all sheriffs because it did present unique problems to us. I'll tell you, the biggest impact in Siskiyou County is we have 107 beds in our jail maximum. We have 104 plus 3 medical beds, and not one misdemeanor, you know, will stay in the jail for any length of time. It's all felons in our jail. Now, that is a challenge. We do have a very workable community corrections partnership that is required by realignment, and that's where the sheriff and the behavioral health services and the judge and the district attorney and the public defender and a bunch of other stakeholders, you know, especially probation, you know, work together to allocate funds provided by the state. Now, I worked for Jerry Brown twice because, like Mike Poindexter, I worked for a police department back in the 77, then I joined the highway patrol. So I worked for a police department, I worked for the highway patrol for almost 33 years. And I worked for Jerry Brown back in the 70s when he was the governor then. And he's a little older and a little wiser, but I must say, I'm not going to get into politics, but he has provided the counties the funding mechanisms that help us to design programs to deal with this influx of non-violent, non-sex offender, non-serious offenders that we're getting into our counties. It's a huge problem. And imagine those jails that were built for maybe 60% misdemeanors, you know, your bar brawlers, your drunk drivers, your petty thieves, and now it's all felons, you know, serious offenders. We have to decide what felon to release. Well, do we, you know, release the domestic violence offender or the armed robber? You know, those kind of things. But, you know, we work together, you know, to make those decisions, and we have a risk assessment tool. And, you know, normally we're not happy with the people that are released, but we try to release the least offensive individual out into society. Now, I think I'd just like to elaborate on the good side of realignment. Is that I think the counties can do a better job than the state to help rehabilitate offenders. And I'll tell you, the way things are going right now is we cannot afford to throw everybody in the slammer and throw away the key anymore. We don't have the money. In my jail, it costs over $119 a day to house an offender. Over $119 a day. In the state prison system, it's upwards somewhere around anywhere from $35,000 to $55,000 to house an inmate on an annual basis. So I think the counties, like my county, we have a great community corrections partnership. We have a lot of synergy, and we're working on rehabilitation programs, counseling, treatment. We're working on alternate work programs. We're trying to get people educated. We're trying to give them, you know, family enrichment. Some criminals have anger management problems, so we help them deal with their anger. So, in actuality, we are seeing some success because we are attempting to give inmates and their families, because we even have family enrichment programs, we're trying to give them more tools with which they can be more successful in society. And right now, you know, the recidivism rate in the North State is like 70%. In my county, because of some of the programs, we're seeing anecdotal and scientific information indicate that perhaps the recidivism rate is dropping like 20 to 25, maybe 30%. Now, if that holds, that's huge. So I think the counties are doing a better job than the state did in helping transform people's lives, and maybe, and I think a lot of people can be rehabilitated. Some people will never be rehabilitated, but in that way, I think the realignment program, it's a, they handed us a real challenge. But with that challenge came opportunities, and I think Dean Wilson and all these sheriffs sitting before you are the kind of sheriffs who are innovative, that will use that as an opportunity to make the best out of a precarious and maybe a bad situation. And I think in Siskiyou County, I think we're ahead of the game. You know, we had some state people came up, and we have a day reporting center where all the inmates report. And we even have them out there picking up trash on the freeway. Hey, I'm all for getting them gainfully employed, because if you get them gainfully employed, they're not out ripping people off or doing the nefarious things. So we're doing a lot of positive things. I think that this program could ultimately be successful if we turn some of these criminals into so-called law-abiding citizens. And we're working real well with our counterparts in the other agencies. And now, the big question is, in my mind, is the money we're getting enough? Probably isn't. But we're working with it. We're working with LIHCs. We're working with the inmates, and we're trying to make the best out of a difficult situation. I think that's all I have to say. I'll field questions later if you have any specific questions about Siskiyou County. But another thing I just mentioned, being in this great hall, you know, represents all the armed forces and the sacrifices made by those servicemen and women in the past. We're doing things in my county like approximately 9% of the inmates are veterans. So we're trying to help the veterans out because some of them are you know, suffering from PTSD. We even have equine therapy, which is horse therapy for some inmates. Believe it or not, horses are great animals, and they're helping with this therapeutic process. And the reason I endorsed it is because horses have been used for wounded veterans very successfully in disabled kids. So there are a lot of good programs out there. A lot of us are using the similar or same programs, and I think that the future may look bright if we keep up the good work in our respective counties. Thank you. Mike's got some extra horses.
Yeah, one of the issues that AB109 that we've seen in Delaware County, of course, is petty theft and the homeless. Because many of these coming out of state prison, they aren't available to get a lot of the social net programs to keep them down from because of their felony convictions in the past. And it also, when they don't have a support system around them, many of them then lead to committing these petty crimes. And as many of the sheriffs said, the people that we have in our custody right now, they're the felons. You do not see the prosecution coming out of a lot of our DA's office for petty crimes, and that of course escalates the fact that many of these individuals will continue to commit these minor crimes when they know the likelihood of seeing conviction is very, very small. Anyway, Larry?
Thanks, Sheriff. I think I pretty much addressed everything that regarding AB109 that I was going to speak about. I don't want to be redundant here. We're doing a lot of the same similar things, but one thing I would touch on that you need to understand is the expenses in the jails that AB109 has caused. On the medical side, as we take on these long-term inmates, and I've had them now sentenced just recently to over almost 3.5 years of time in the county jail. And as you've heard over and over again, my jail was never, ever designed to handle long-term inmates. But we must now provide that medical care for them. So if they develop some type of a medical issue, then we have to deal with it. And that costs money, that costs taxpayers money. And when we say we don't get enough, that's probably very true. We have to do preventive medical care now. Like you go to the dentist every 6 months. We have an inmate, they're in there. We have to provide preventive dental care for them also. And I don't have a dental chair in my jail as we compete for this new round of the $500 million funding. It's now Senate Bill 863. Last year it was Senate Bill 1022 funding that we were talking about here. I hope in my new facility we will have a dental chair, and I won't have to transport 45 miles one way to Butte County to get the dental care on our dental runs once a week. If an inmate's in there for a long period of time and they need a colonoscopy or a mammogram, we have to provide it. So all the things that were done at the state prison levels now have to be done at the county jail levels. And it's incumbent on us as the sheriffs to make sure that we're providing that care for those inmates so we don't get into the same problematic issues that the state did many years ago and ignored and caused this kaleidoscope of events that led to AB109.
Thank you. One of the issues that we're seeing across the state is increased attacks on staff because there is a difference in when you deal with someone who psychologically is dealing with a short-term incarceration as opposed to long-term. When someone goes to state prison right now, they do a psychological evaluation on that individual to determine how are they going to adapt to basically being in a prison environment. We do not do those kinds of psychological screenings in county jails. They do in long-term incarceration facilities. But now that's what we're seeing, and the effects of that is part of the violence that we're seeing escalating inside of our facilities, not only because more and more of the individuals we're housing are felons and more violent in their natures, but we're also seeing because of the long-term incarceration effects psychologically. Mike?
You know, one thing that Sheriff Wilson kind of explained to you how this all came about with prison realignment. The governor was prepared to release those, I've heard numbers between 42,000 and 55,000 inmates back into our communities. He was going to do that because he's under a federal mandate to do so. Your state sheriffs within the state of California and chief probation officers are the ones that approached him and said, you know what, let's come up with a better plan. I mean, no one's jumping up and down the aisle saying this is a great plan, but it is better than what could have happened. We actually brought a lot of the burden back upon ourselves because we were concerned about our communities, and we knew what it was going to do to just arbitrarily open up those doors and say, okay, we can no longer state prison, saying we can no longer hold you, we're under a federal mandate to release you, so goodbye, have fun, and I hope your communities survive. That's what was going to happen. And it was very dire, and it was a plan that was brought together very quickly. A lot of people lost a lot of sleep. We're trying to put this thing together, and it's better than what we could have had. It's more or less like an escape valve to slowly release that population back into our communities with the promise and the hope that there's some rehabilitation that goes along with it. If I have anything to add to this, and again, we've talked a lot about this issue, it would be facility construction. That's one place that the state is somewhat lacking in, because with that release of these individuals back into your communities, into our counties, our facilities are lacking. And, you know, my facility was not designed to hold someone 3, 5, 6, 7 years. So there is some monies that have been released for facility construction, more of a lower level facility construction. Those monies need to be increased so that we can hold these people in a secure environment and provide that rehabilitation services that are now mandated under AB109. So anyway, thank you.
I don't have a whole lot of good things to say about it, quite frankly. I'm sorry, but you know, our jail was built in the 70s, and it was built for holding people for a short time. I get it. I mean, I get it. We can't just let these people go. And the only real positive thing I think we're absolutely right. I think closer in the county we could do it better. But really, I mean, give us the money to do it. We heard that talked about up here earlier. I mean, I'm jumping through hoops. I'm driving to Sacramento when it's 20 below. They call us a small county. So we're in there with 30 other people competing for money to implement a program they couldn't do. And, you know, this is the third round coming up. We're going to try again. I've still got a jail that was built in the 70s. The locks in our jail, I can't find anybody to work on them. I can't. The only guy that could work on them was a local guy up there, and he's dead. He passed away.
You tell me you can't do that, man.
There's nobody. I mean, it's just frustrating for me because because we're a small county, you know, we get the token. Everything's based on population, and you know, geez, how much money do you get? 1.2 or something. We get like 100 grand. You know, it doesn't even cover position, and the people, you know, the community partnership, which I'm all for. You know, let's reduce recidivism, but I don't even have enough jailers to staff a jail legally. I've got 6.5 people that run the jail. We've got 43 beds. When I took over 4 years ago, there were 6 people in our jail. And now we're right near bouncing around max depending on the day. And every year we get inspected, and every year I go to the board and say, I need people, I need staff. You can't run a jail with 6.5 people. You can't. And it's an old jail, which means you gotta turn a key, you gotta go in, and you gotta handle the people, and we've got dorms, and these people we're getting now they're a different type of inmate. The first AB109 person we got in our jail tore all the sinks off the walls and the toilets off the floor the first day he was there. And we can't find parts for the stuff, it's so old. When you flush the toilet in one cell, it comes up in the one next to it, because when they built it, they didn't know they should have put the T right in there at the same spot. I mean, so I'm not real sympathetic to any of it, and I don't like driving to Sacramento when it's for nothing. You know, it's hard for us. And again, rural, the small guy, you know, they should have a micro county spot. And maybe we'd have a chance of getting something then. Or maybe they should come up and take a tour, and I can show them, or better yet, let me put them to work for a week in there. You know, it's really hard.
Now, maybe I can put Angela to work for me. Could you use the wireless mic up here? Does anybody have any questions on realignment, specifically?
Yes, the money that Washington gives to states to assist with all of this, is that money being distributed amongst you sheriffs as it should be? In other words, is Sacramento spending some of it for something else, and you men ain't seeing any of it?
We didn't get no federal funds for realignment. It is all a state program. This was, even though it was mandated by the federal government, we were forced to do the action because that was a case against the state of California. The actual realignment shift of responsibility from the state to counties was not done. There was no federal funding involved. It's all state funding.
It's, you know, years ago when they turned all the mental people loose in California, we're still not getting over that. This is kind of the things that we're getting all of our jails full of now is the mentally ill. And we need to get some help back, get the mental hospitals to take care of the problem, so we can do our normal inmate and work.
There's no doubt that your largest mental health facilities